Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a journey into a corner of higher education that, well, often gets painted as a bureaucratic maze. Accreditation, specifically ABET. But here's the twist. We're not just talking about mountains of paperwork. We're going to unearth how cutting-edge information systems are utterly transforming this process, moving it from a frustrating hurdle into a powerful engine for true educational excellence.
That's exactly right. Our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the fundamental why and, maybe more importantly, the practical how behind developing truly robust information systems for ABET accreditation. We've pulled insights from a really comprehensive guide on building this kind of architecture for excellence. So yeah, we'll explore the strategic thinking needed to make this transformation happen.
And for you, our dedicated listener, maybe you're gearing up for a crucial meeting, or you're just looking to get up to speed in this vital field, or perhaps you just have that insatiable curiosity. Well, this is your direct shortcut to becoming genuinely well-informed on what can seem like a pretty complex topic. Prepare for some surprising facts, I think, and practical insights that move way beyond just, checking the boxes. We're going to navigate everything from the core philosophy of ABET, all the way to revolutionary technologies like AI and blockchain, and even that pivotal, sometimes multi-million-dollar decision. Do you build one of these systems yourself, or do you buy a commercial solution? So let's dig in.
Okay, let's start right at the beginning. Let's demystify ABET itself. ABET stands for the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology. It's a nonprofit, non-governmental agency. Now, here's a really crucial distinction. They don't accredit entire universities. No. Instead, they accredit specific programs. Think applied science, computing, engineering technology programs. It's entirely voluntary. It's a peer review process. And its core purpose, really, is to ensure these programs meet the highest professional quality standards.
Okay, I can see why that distinction programs, not whole universities, is important. But what really fascinates me is this philosophical pivot ABET made. Historically, accreditation felt very input-based, almost like counting ingredients, right? How many PhDs on staff, how many credit hours in the curriculum, that sort of thing. But ABET fundamentally flipped that script. They shifted to an outcomes-based approach. What does that truly mean for how programs get evaluated?
It's a profound change. It means the focus is squarely on what students actually learn and can do when they graduate. It's not just about what they were taught or, how many fancy labs a department has. This emphasis on measurable student capabilities. What skills do they possess? What problems can they actually solve? That philosophical shift is the primary, undeniable driver for needing these sophisticated, systematic information systems. You just can't track and demonstrate outcomes effectively with, paper and static files anymore.
That makes perfect sense. And it's not like a one-and-done certification either, is it? I mean, it's an ongoing thing.
Precisely. ABET accreditation isn't a finish line you cross. It's really a continuous journey. It typically follows a 6-year cycle, which means the information system supporting it can't just be some static archive for old reports. It must be a dynamic, living environment, something that fosters ongoing assessment, ongoing review, and, most critically, improvement. It needs to be sustainable. It has to support a culture where progress is constantly tracked and acted upon. We've even seen some interesting examples like Malaysian universities using highly dynamic Oracle systems for exactly this purpose. It really highlights the need for a continuous, active approach.
Okay, so if the whole system is built around documenting these outcomes, how do ABET's specific criteria translate into concrete data demands for these systems? Let's start with Program Educational Objectives, or PEOs, the criterion too. What are those about?
Right, PEOs. Think of PEOs as the legacy of a program. They're about what graduates are expected to achieve a few years after graduation. 5 years out, maybe? They reflect the long-term impact of the education they received. So for a system to support this, it needs to manage and document really robust stakeholder involvement. We're talking current students, faculty, alumni, employers, those crucial advisory boards gathering their input for regular PEO reviews. The system also needs the capacity to demonstrate how these PEOs align with the overall institutional mission, maybe by, tagging them to specific mission statements within the system. And here's the absolute key. The system must meticulously document the review process itself. Meeting minutes, survey results, any changes made to the PEOs over time. This creates an absolutely transparent, auditable trail. You can see the history.
Got it. So PEOs are the long game, what happens after they leave. But then we have student outcomes, or SOs, under Criterion 3. What's the critical distinction here? What do systems need to capture for SOs?
Well, SOs, unlike PEOs, are what students should know and be able to do right at the time of graduation. These are the concrete skills, the knowledge, the behaviors. They're the building blocks that ultimately support those long-term PEOs. For SOs, the system needs to allow you to map them directly to PEOs, showing that logical connection, that alignment. It also needs flexibility. It has to accommodate either ABET's standard SOs, usually numbered 1 through 7, or potentially custom-defined SOs, as long as there's clear documentation showing how they still cover all the required elements.
Okay, so PEOs, long-term external feedback, SOs, short-term internal evidence. It sounds like the data collection for these two must be profoundly different. Can you unpack that distinction for us? Because this feels like a place where a lot of institutions might trip up, right?
You've absolutely hit on a critical point. It's a fundamental difference, and systems have to handle it. PEOs are measured externally, often years after graduation. You're relying on feedback from alumni surveys, employer surveys, input from advisory boards. These are what you might call lagging indicators. SEOs, however, are measured internally and concurrently, right around the time of graduation or even throughout the program. You're drawing from direct evidence, things like homework assignments, projects, exams, and especially those big capstone projects. So an effective information system must have distinct modules or, separate data pathways for these two very different types of evidence. They're collected from different populations over different time frames. It's not just one single data stream. It's a complex, multifaceted evidence ecosystem you're managing.
Wow, okay. That immediately highlights why trying to manage this whole thing with a handful of scattered spreadsheets is just, well, a recipe for chaos. Which brings us to criterion 4, continuous improvement. You called it the heartbeat of the system earlier. This sounds like the toughest one because it's not just about collecting data, but actually using it.
It is arguably the most challenging criterion, yes, and maybe the most important. This criterion moves beyond merely assessing students to using the results for genuine, documented improvement. It's essentially the famous Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle PDCA in action within an academic context. The system must fundamentally support this entire workflow. Plan involves setting clear, measurable performance targets for your student outcomes. Do means efficiently collecting the necessary assessment data. Check is where you evaluate that data against your targets, identify the gaps, figure out what's working and what's not. And ACT involves documenting the improvement actions, taking things like curriculum changes, new teaching methods, maybe different resources, and crucially, feeding that information back into the next planning cycle. It's all about closing the loop.
I've heard the term death by assessment thrown around in higher ed circles. Is that where this emphasis on continuous improvement can go wrong if it's not managed properly by the system and the people?
Absolutely. Death by assessment is a very real danger, unfortunately. It's what happens when you have faculty drowning in assessment tasks, collecting mountains of data, but it yields too little actionable insight. It leads directly to faculty burnout, resentment, you name it. A well-designed system has to prioritize efficiency and meaningfulness. It should leverage embedded assessments, meaning using the work students are already doing in their courses and projects. And it should employ smart sampling techniques rather than trying to assess every single student on every single outcome all the time. This really emphasizes the human factor. The system should serve the faculty and the program, not just burden them. It needs to make the process sustainable and genuinely insightful, not just technically possible.
So if we're moving from that scattered mess of spreadsheets and shared folders to a truly synergistic ecosystem, what's the architectural solution? How do we build this digital backbone effectively?
Right. The problem, as you said, is that patchwork approach most institutions start with. Excel sheets everywhere, Word docs, random shared folders. It's wildly inefficient, it's incredibly prone to errors, it's hard to maintain, and it completely prevents any kind of useful longitudinal analysis or strategic insight. You can't see trends. The solution really is a centralized relational database. Think of it as a single source of truth for all your accreditation-related data, a central hub. This database integrates curriculum development, outcomes assessment, program review. Everything fits together into one holistic ecosystem. It connects the dots.
Okay, so if we're moving from that paper nightmare to a hopefully digital dream, what are the essential rooms in this new architectural masterpiece? What are the core functions the system absolutely has to perform?
Good question. The foundational layer, kind of the blueprint for everything else, is the curriculum mapping module. This visually links your courses to your student outcomes and even up to your program educational objectives. It shows precisely where specific SOs are being introduced, perhaps reinforced in later courses, and finally, mastered. This module is incredibly powerful because it instantly helps you spot curriculum gaps, or maybe unnecessary redundancies. And crucially, it points to the most logical places within the curriculum to actually assess those outcomes.
Makes sense. And once you know where things are taught, you need a plan for how you'll actually measure those outcomes, right?
Exactly. That's where the Outcomes and Assessment Planning module comes into play. It allows faculty to define clear, measurable performance indicators, or PIs, for each student outcome. Think of PIs as the specific, observable things students will do to demonstrate the outcome. And then the module lets them document their entire assessment plan, specifying what they're measuring, with what tools, like specific rubrics or designated sections of exams, in which courses, and when during the semester or year. This ensures the whole assessment process is systematic, well-documented, repeatable, and transparent. It builds that crucial chain of evidence ABET needs to see.
And then collecting the actual proof, the student work itself, the projects, the exams, that's where an evidence module becomes vital, I'd assume.
Yes, absolutely. That's the evidence collection and e-portfolio module. This acts as your secure, central repository for all that direct evidence of student learning. We're talking submitted assignments, project reports, lab results, maybe even videos of presentations. Ideally, it's designed to easily import relevant data directly from other systems, like pulling grades or rubric scores straight from your learning management system, your LMS. This module really helps shift the focus from relying solely on indirect evidence, like satisfaction surveys, towards analyzing the actual student work itself, which is really central to the whole ABET philosophy. And the ePortfolio aspect also encourages students to reflect on their own learning and compile their achievements.
So you have all this rich data collected, direct evidence, assessment plans. But raw data isn't insight, is it? How do you make sense of it all and turn it into actionable intelligence?
That's the critical role of the data analysis and reporting dashboards. This is where the magic happens, turning data into meaning. These modules aggregate all that assessment data into immediately understandable visual, think dynamic charts, graphs, heat maps, things faculty and administrators can grasp quickly. Crucially, they allow you to disaggregate the data. You can look at performance by program, by course, by specific outcome, even by student demographics if needed ethically. This is where raw data transforms into actionable insights, quickly revealing what's working beautifully and highlighting areas that need immediate attention or improvement.
And finally, closing that loop, that critical act, part of the continuous improvement cycle we talked about.
Right. That's handled by the Continuous Improvement and Action Tracking module. This is essentially a workflow tool. It's where you record the results of your assessment analysis, document the proposed improvement plans, assign responsibility to specific individuals or committees, set timelines, and maybe even track associated budgets. It provides that clear, auditable evidence of closing the loop, which, believe it or not, is a frequently missed element when programs report for Criterion 4. This module proves you're not just assessing for assessment's sake, but you're actually acting on what you learned to get better.
This all sounds like a really intricate web of interconnected data points. Can you maybe paint a high-level picture for us? How do these pieces conceptually fit together? What does that data architecture truly look like, in simple terms?
Yeah, conceptually, think of it like connecting dots. You have your key things, your entities. These are institutions, programs, faculty, students, constituents like alumni and employers, courses, PEOs, SOs, those specific performance indicators, PIs, the assessment instruments themselves, like rubrics or exams, the actual student artifacts or work samples, the resulting assessment data, and finally, the improvement actions you decide to take. The architecture then defines the relationships between these things, how courses map to specific SOs, how SOs support the broader PEOs, how particular assessment instruments are used within certain courses to measure specific PIs, how student artifacts generate assessment data points, and critically, how improvement plans are linked back to specific SOs based on the patterns found in that assessment data. It creates this comprehensive, interconnected chain of evidence that ABET program evaluators look for. It allows you to trace everything back and see the whole picture.
And these sophisticated systems, they don't operate in a vacuum, right? How do they actually talk to or connect with a university's existing IT infrastructure? Things like their main student database or the online learning platform.
That integration piece is absolutely crucial. They must integrate seamlessly or faculty just won't use them effectively. First, you have the Student Information System, or SIS. These are the big platforms like Oracle Student Cloud, PeopleSoft, Banner. The SIS is the primary source for foundational data. Who's enrolled in what courses, course rosters, faculty assignments, student demographics. The accreditation system should automatically pull this data, probably nightly, to eliminate redundant manual input and ensure consistency. Huge time saver. Then there's the learning management system, or LMS Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, Moodle, whatever the institution uses. This is where so much of the day-to-day teaching and learning actually happens, and where a lot of the assessment, evidence, assignments, quizzes, discussion forums, graded rubrics actually resides. Integration here, often via a standard called Learning Tools Interoperability, or LTI, is paramount. Think of LTI as like a universal translator or a USB port for educational software. It lets these different systems talk to each other securely and seamlessly. So the accreditation system can pull grades, rubric data, even links to student work directly from the LMS without faculty having to upload things twice. This is absolutely critical for faculty buy-in. It minimizes disruption to their existing workflows and lets them operate in familiar digital environments.
Okay, so once you understand the why, the need for outcomes, and the what, these core system modules and integrations, here's where institutions hit that classic fork in the road. It feels like a huge decision. Do you roll up your sleeves, maybe invest heavily upfront, and build this complex system entirely from scratch? Or do you go out to the marketplace and buy something off the shelf? This isn't just an IT decision, is it? It feels like a major strategic bet on your institution's future agility, its resources, maybe even its independence.
You're absolutely right. It's a pivotal strategic decision, and there are significant trade-offs either way. Let's break it down. If you choose to buy a commercial off-the-shelf solution, COT, as they're often called, the immediate pros are usually faster deployment. You get up and running quicker. You're also leveraging the vendor's specialized expertise. They live and breathe accreditation best practices, hopefully. And it significantly reduces the burden on your internal IT department for things like ongoing maintenance, software updates, security patches. That all falls mostly on the vendor. Plus, you often gain access to established user communities, other schools using the same software and dedicated support channels from the vendor.
That sounds pretty appealing, especially the reduced IT burden and faster start. What are the potential downsides, the cons to buying?
Well, the big one is usually ongoing subscription fees. These can accumulate to a pretty substantial sum over the years, becoming a significant operational expense. There's also often limited customization. The system might be 80% of what you want, but that last 20%, well, your institution might need to adapt its unique processes to fit the software rather than the other way around. That can cause friction. And of course, there's always the risk of vendor lock-in. Once you're deeply invested in a particular platform, switching later, if you become unhappy or their prices go up, can be technically difficult and very costly.
Okay, so that's the buy side. Now, what if we decide to build an in-house system, maybe like building a custom race car perfectly tuned for your specific track? What's the appeal there? Why would an institution take that on?
The primary appeal of the build option is complete customization. You can tailor the system precisely to your institution's unique program philosophies, specific workflows, maybe even integrate deeply with other homegrown systems. You mentioned the Polaris example earlier. That's often cited as a case of deep customization. You also gain full control and ownership of the intellectual property, the code, and importantly, your data resides entirely within your own infrastructure under your control. And depending on how you calculate it, there's the potential for a lower long-term total cost of ownership, or TCO, because you avoid those continuous, often escalating licensing fees down the line.
But I'm guessing building that custom race car comes with its own set of very significant challenges and risks. It sounds expensive and complex.
It certainly does. The cons are usually a very high initial cost, both in terms of money and, just as importantly, time investment from your developers and project managers. It takes a long time to get it right. Your institution then takes on the full responsibility for everything: ongoing maintenance, security updates, adding new features, user support, training. It all falls on your internal team. And there's a significant reliance on having and retaining a stable, skilled internal development team. This makes the project inherently high risk. If key personnel leave midway through development or even after launch, the project can stall or even fail. We've seen papers presented at ACA conferences documenting exactly these kinds of challenges with homegrown systems.
This really sounds like it boils down to more than just comparing the sticker price of a commercial system versus developer salaries. What goes into a truly meaningful total cost of ownership calculation here, accounting for those less obvious, maybe hidden factors?
That's a crucial point. A meaningful TCO calculation must absolutely include those hidden and intangible costs. It's nowhere near as simple as just comparing subscription fees to developer salaries. For the buy option, hidden costs might include things like faculty time spent creating complex workarounds because the off-the-shelf system isn't flexible enough for their specific pedagogical needs. That's a real cost. For the build option, hidden costs include extensive project management overhead, the cost of ongoing IT training to keep skills current, security audits, and maybe the biggest one, the opportunity cost. What else could your valuable developers have been working on? Maybe student-facing applications, research support, instead of building and maintaining this accreditation system. The analysis really has to assess holistic value over the long term, not just upfront costs. It has to consider strategic alignment, flexibility, risk, and support needs.
And is there perhaps a middle ground, a sort of hybrid approach that some institutions take?
Yes, absolutely. That's becoming increasingly common. Many institutions opt for a hybrid approach. They might purchase a core commercial platform to get the foundational stability and vendor support, but then invest in significant customization, perhaps developing specific modules or integrations in-house, or hiring the vendor or a third party to build specific customizations. This tries to combine the benefits of both approaches, leveraging the vendor's core product while still tailoring it to meet unique institutional needs. It's often about finding that right balance between off-the-shelf reliability and tailored flexibility.
Okay, let's shift gears and look at the actual marketplace.
Yeah.
If an institution decides to buy, what does that commercial platform landscape look like? Let's start with a giant like Oracle. How do they fit in?
Right. Oracle, with products like Oracle Student Cloud, is interesting because it's typically not just an accreditation solution. It's usually positioned as a comprehensive enterprise-level system. It often encompasses the Student Information System, SIS, sometimes even elements of an LMS, and powerful analytics capabilities, all tightly integrated. It provides potentially very deep integration across the entire student lifecycle, from recruitment and admissions all the way through to alumni relations. So the accreditation functionality, while present, is generally part of a much larger centralized data warehouse strategy. This enables potentially very deep analysis, connecting accreditation data with student performance, retention statistics, course enrollment patterns, even institutional finances. What's fascinating here is that adopting an Oracle-level solution is typically part of a much broader, institution-wide digital transformation strategy. It's usually driven from the top down by much more than just the immediate needs of ABET accreditation. It's a big picture enterprise data play.
So Oracle's the big integrated ecosystem approach. What about platforms that are more specifically focused just on assessment and accreditation management, perhaps designed to plug into existing SIS systems?
Yes, there are several well-established vendors specializing in this area, and they often integrate tightly with the major SIS and LMS platforms. Watermark is definitely a major player. They've grown through acquisitions and offer a pretty diverse suite of tools. Their planning and self-study module, for instance, is quite flexible. It often includes templates not just for ABET, but for various regional accreditors like HLC, ASCICCC, making it adaptable across different accreditation needs within an institution. They also have tools specifically for outcomes assessment projects. This used to be known as AQUA, and another key piece called Faculty Success, which is crucial for managing faculty credentials, publications, service activities, all the stuff needed for the faculty qualification sections of self-study reports. It's widely used in engineering programs.
Okay, Watermark is a big one. Who else should institutions be aware of in this specialized space?
Then there's Weave. They often position themselves as a simpler, perhaps more streamlined, all-in-one solution. Their pitch is often about avoiding complex modular pricing or hidden costs. They aim to integrate assessment, accreditation reporting, curriculum mapping, and faculty qualification management into a single, cohesive platform. User testimonials suggest it's commonly used for engineering and technology program reporting, often praised for its relative simplicity. Anthology is another major player, also formed from multiple mergers, most notably the combination of Campus Labs with Blackboard. This creates potentially a very broad ecosystem, especially if an institution is already using the Blackboard LMS, or maybe their Anthology Student SIS or Anthology Reach CRM. Their specific assessment tools, like Baseline and Outcomes, are designed to integrate directly with Blackboard for pulling assessment data, offering a potentially highly integrated experience if an institution commits to their full suite. It's also definitely documented for use in ABET accreditation processes.
And you mentioned one more earlier, Heliocampus.
Yes, Heliocampus, which was formerly known as AEFIS, Assessment, Evaluation, Feedback, and Intervention System. A key focus for Heliocampus has always been seamless LMS integration. They put a huge emphasis on working smoothly within Canvas, Blackboard, D2L, the environments where faculty are already spending their time. The idea is to drive faculty adoption by minimizing the need for them to learn entirely new systems. They aim to automate evidence collection from the LMS as much as possible. They also provide self-study report templates and place a significant emphasis on supporting the emerging concept of the Comprehensive Learner Record, or CLR, which we might touch on later.
It really sounds like these vendors aren't just selling features and functions. They're selling a distinct philosophy, a specific approach to managing assessment and accreditation data.
That's absolutely right. It's a great way to put it. They sell a philosophy, not just software. Oracle, as we said, embodies that top-down, enterprise-wide data integration strategy. Watermark and Anthology offer these broad, interconnected tool suites, aiming for comprehensive coverage across various institutional needs. Weave emphasizes simplicity, ease of use, and often an all-inclusive pricing model. And Heliocampus is very LMS-centric and faculty-focused, prioritizing workflow integration and adoption by making it easy for instructors. The optimal choice for any given institution truly depends on its unique culture, its existing IT infrastructure landscape, its budget, and critically, its overarching strategic goals for assessment and improvement. There's no single best answer.
This whole discussion has really highlighted the power of the technology, how sophisticated these systems can be, but keeps coming back to this point. Even the most amazing software will likely fail without the right people and processes wrapped around it. What's the crucial human element in all of this? How do we ensure success goes beyond just flipping the switch on a new tech platform?
The human element is absolutely paramount. You cannot overstate its importance. Technology is merely a tool, a powerful enabler, yes, but it is not a replacement for well-defined human processes, clear communication, and, crucially, human engagement and buy-in. True success requires a significant culture shift within the institution, or at least within the programs involved, towards embracing evidence-based improvement as a core value, not just a compliance exercise. This shift has to be driven by visible, supportive leadership. It needs to be supported by comprehensive, ongoing training. And, perhaps most importantly, success depends on clearly demonstrating the system's tangible value back to the users, especially faculty. Show them how it reduces their administrative burden, or how it gives them genuinely useful insights to improve their own teaching and their students' learning outcomes.
What are some of the most common pitfalls institutions run into when trying to implement these systems, besides just choosing the wrong tech? And what are the practical strategies to avoid them?
A huge pitfall, maybe the biggest and most common, is that lack of faculty buy-in we keep mentioning. Faculty often perceive accreditation processes and the system supporting them as just another external mandate, more administrative burden piled onto their already full plates. They don't see what's in it for them. The strategy here is multifaceted. You absolutely must involve faculty early and meaningfully in the system selection and design process. Provide extensive, ongoing, easily accessible training and user support. Leverage those LMS integrated systems we talked about to minimize the shock of entirely new workflows. But most importantly, you have to relentlessly communicate and demonstrate how the system provides them with useful, timely insights for improving their own courses and understanding their students' progress. Make it relevant to their daily work. Another common issue is scattered or inconsistent data. This quickly leads to chaos and mistrust if different departments or even different faculty members within a department use different tools, different templates, or different definitions for the same metrics. The strategy here really requires a coordinated, ideally college-wide or even university-wide approach for system selection and implementation. This enables sharing resources, developing standardized templates where appropriate, defining terms consistently, and importantly, sharing best practices across different programs. You need central coordination.
And what about the actual learning outcomes themselves? Can they be a pitfall if they're not well written?
Oh, absolutely. Poorly defined learning outcomes are a major roadblock right at the start. If you have vague outcomes like students will understand thermodynamics or students will appreciate ethical responsibilities, well, how do you reliably measure understanding or appreciation? They're almost impossible to assess consistently. The strategy here involves proactively training faculty on how to write clear, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound smart learning outcomes. Using strong action verbs, often aligned with something like Bloom's taxonomy, is key. Clarity and measurability at this foundational level, the outcome definition itself, are absolutely critical for the entire assessment system and the software supporting it to actually function effectively and produce meaningful data. Garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
And with all this sensitive student data assessment results, performance indicators, maybe even demographic data flowing through these systems, data governance must be absolutely critical, right?
It is completely essential. Robust data governance isn't just a nice to have. It's a necessity for ensuring data quality, consistency, security, and appropriate access. Implementing effective data governance usually involves establishing a dedicated data governance committee or working group. This group is responsible for defining key data terms and metrics consistently across the institution, setting clear policies for data access and usage, ensuring data security protocols are followed, and resolving any disputes over data interpretation. Good governance builds trust in the data. If people trust the data, they're more likely to use it for genuine reporting and decision-making, rather than arguing about whose spreadsheet is correct. It's vital for making evidence-based decisions.
And of course, beyond just good practice, there are legal requirements. Protecting student privacy is non-negotiable.
Absolutely non-negotiable. Any system, whether you build it in-house or buy it from a vendor, must strictly comply with FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act in the U.S., which protects the privacy of student education records. This means having robust technical measures like secure data storage, encryption, strict access controls based on roles, and legitimate educational interest. It also requires clear, transparent policies about how student data will be collected, used, stored, and protected. And beyond just legal compliance with FERPA, institutions increasingly need to grapple with the broader ethics of learning analytics. As we collect more granular data, we need clear ethical frameworks addressing questions like algorithmic bias and predictive models, student data ownership and consent, transparency in how data is used for advising or interventions. It's about building and maintaining trust with your students, trust with your faculty that this data is being used responsibly and ethically to support learning, not just for surveillance.
It truly sounds like engaging both faculty and students actively in this whole process is key, not just for implementation, but for sustaining success and really getting the most value out of these powerful systems long term.
Indeed. We've talked a lot about faculty engagement. Foundational training is crucial, yes, but deeper, sustained engagement really comes from demonstrating those direct, tangible benefits we discussed. Show them how the system gives them valuable insights into their own courses, helps identify students who might be struggling earlier, or even simplifies tasks like compiling portfolios for their own academic advancement or promotion reviews. Make it work for them. And students. They're an often overlooked but incredibly valuable resource for continuous improvement. We should actively engage them. One way is through e-portfolios, which these systems often support. This allows students not just to submit work, but to actively self-assess, reflect on their learning journey against the program outcomes, and curate examples of their best work. We also need structured feedback mechanisms beyond just end-of-course surveys that allow students to provide meaningful input on courses and the program overall, with clear channels showing how that feedback actually feeds into the continuous improvement cycle documented in the system. And simple transparency is powerful. Make the program educational objectives, PEOs, and student outcomes publicly known, easily accessible, and clearly explained. When students understand the goals of their education, they're more engaged in achieving them and can provide more relevant feedback.
Okay, let's put on our futurist hats for a moment. We've talked about the present, but how are emerging technologies, particularly things like artificial intelligence, starting to shape the future of accreditation management? Is it moving beyond just automation?
AI, and particularly generative AI, are definitely poised to be significant game changers in this space, moving well beyond simple automation. For instance, AI tools are getting increasingly sophisticated at performing complex curriculum gap analysis. They can automatically analyze curriculum maps, syllabi, even assessment data to swiftly identify potential content gaps, redundancies, or misalignments between courses and stated outcomes, tasks that would take humans countless hours of painstaking manual review. Generative AI also shows huge promise in assisting with the drafting of self-study reports. Imagine AI summarizing complex assessment results from dashboards, helping ensure consistency in language and tone across different sections written by various faculty, maybe even generating initial drafts of action plans based on identified deficiencies highlighted in the data. Now, this is a powerful efficiency tool. It frees up faculty time to focus on higher-level analysis, strategic thinking, and pedagogical innovation, rather than getting bogged down in the mechanics of report writing. But crucially, it still requires careful human oversight, review, and editing for accuracy, context, and nuance. It's an assistant, not a replacement.
So AI helps with the heavy lifting of analyzing data and drafting text. What other potentially transformative applications are we starting to see or anticipate?
Well, another exciting area is AI powering course improvement recommender systems. Imagine systems that can analyze patterns in student performance data, maybe combined with qualitative feedback, to suggest specific, targeted improvement strategies for instructors, perhaps pointing them to new pedagogical resources, suggesting alternative teaching approaches for tricky concepts, or identifying specific assessment items that seem problematic. But maybe the most profound impact, thinking longer term, is how AI is fundamentally shifting the focus from manual data collection and organization to data interpretation. In the past, a huge chunk of the effort in accreditation was just manually gathering, cleaning, and organizing vast amounts of data. AI tools are rapidly automating many of these laborious tasks. This means the unique added value from faculty and administrators will increasingly move away from being data collectors and towards being sophisticated data interpreters. Human skills will revolve more around asking the right questions of the data, critically evaluating the outputs and recommendations generated by AI systems, understanding potential biases, and ultimately making those nuanced, context-aware, ethical decisions about curriculum design and improvement strategies. This has really significant implications for faculty development, for the skills we need to cultivate in educators, and for their evolving roles in a data-rich environment.
That's a huge shift in roles, moving from collector to interpreter. What about the related fields of learning analytics and interoperability standards? Especially, as you said, learning happens everywhere now in simulations, labs, internships, not just neatly within the LMS.
Exactly. As learning becomes more distributed, moving beyond the confines of the traditional LMS, we absolutely need robust interoperability standards to collect meaningful data from these diverse sources and paint a more holistic picture of student learning. One powerful standard gaining traction is XAPI, or the Experience API. Think of it as a very flexible format for recording all sorts of learning experiences, formal and informal, in simple actor-verb object statements. For example, Jane actor completed verb the safety simulation module object, or John actor collaborated verb on the capstone design project object. This allows institutions to track the development of specific skills and competencies, which is incredibly critical in fields like engineering across multiple platforms, contexts, and activities, building that truly comprehensive view of learning. Another key standard, particularly from the IMS Global Learning Consortium, now One EdTech, is Caliper Analytics. Caliper is specifically focused on defining a standard way to collect detailed learning activity events from many different educational applications and platforms. It uses a common vocabulary and data format, enabling much richer cross-platform analysis and creating the potential for a truly connected learning data ecosystem.
And the really buzzy technology that always comes up in these future talks, blockchain. How does something like blockchain potentially fit into this world of accreditation and verifying student credentials?
Blockchain. Yes, it offers a genuinely groundbreaking potential solution, particularly for verifying credentials securely and reliably. The fundamental problem with traditional paper transcripts, or even static PDFs, is that they're relatively easy to falsify, they're cumbersome, and verifying them is often a slow manual process for employers or other institutions. Blockchain, at its core, provides a secure, decentralized, immutable digital ledger. Once a record, like earning a degree or mastering a specific skill verified by an assessment, is added to the blockchain, it becomes incredibly difficult, virtually impossible, to alter or tamper with, and it can be verified instantly by anyone with permission. This ties directly into the development of the Comprehensive Learner Record, or CLR. The CLR is envisioned as the next generation digital transcript, but it's so much more than just a list of courses and grades. Imagine a rich, dynamic, verifiable digital portfolio or record that captures all of a student's significant learning achievements, both inside and outside the traditional classroom degrees, certificates, badges, specific skills mastered in projects, competencies demonstrated in internships, maybe even co-curricular activities. Crucially, these achievements within the CLR are often linked to specific defined skills and competencies, providing much more granular detail than a traditional transcript. And they are often secured and made verifiable using blockchain technology. This provides complete auditable evidence of student attainment potentially, including direct evidence related to ABET student outcomes that the student controls and can share directly and securely with employers, graduate schools, or licensing bodies. Platforms like Helio Campus, as I mentioned, are already actively building support for this revolutionary CLR concept. It's like a verifiable, skill-based passport for navigating one's career and lifelong learning journey.
So we've journeyed through the why, the shift to outcomes, the what, the necessary systems, the how build versus buy, the vendors, and even glimpsed what's coming next with AI and blockchain. Tying this all together, What does this really mean for an institution that's looking to truly embrace this transformation? How do they move forward strategically towards genuine educational excellence using these systems effectively?
It really means adopting a thoughtful, phased roadmap for implementation. You can't boil the ocean overnight. First, you absolutely have to lay the foundations. This means focusing intensely on the people and process aspects before you even get deep into the technology. Establish clear data governance structures, agree on common definitions for outcomes and metrics, provide comprehensive faculty training on writing measurable outcomes and using assessment data effectively. Get the culture ready. Then you move into system selection and piloting. This is where you conduct that thorough build versus buy analysis, deeply evaluate potential vendors or your internal capacity, and then, critically, test your chosen system with a limited pilot program, maybe 1 or 2 departments, to work out the kinks and build early successes. Next comes full deployment and integration, rolling out the system more broadly across all relevant programs with a continued heavy emphasis on ongoing training, user support, and ensuring those seamless technical integrations with your core SIS and LMS platforms. And finally, once the system is mature, widely adopted, and has accumulated rich longitudinal data, you can move into the optimization and advanced analytics phase. This is where you really start leveraging the more powerful features, like deep longitudinal analysis of student cohorts, maybe exploring those cutting-edge AI-driven insights, or implementing CLR capabilities. It's an ongoing journey of refinement.
So ultimately, after all this investment in time and money and cultural change, what's the true return on investment here? It surely can't just be about getting that stamp of approval from ABET every 6 years, can it?
You're absolutely right. That's the critical point to end on. The ultimate goal, the true return on investment, is not merely achieving a 6-year accreditation cycle with no concerns, noted by the ABET visiting team, although that's certainly important. The real lasting ROI of implementing a well-architected accreditation information system, coupled with the right processes and culture, is the creation and nurturing of a sustainable, data-informed culture of continuous improvement. It's about genuinely elevating the quality of education, making demonstrable gains in student learning, and ultimately significantly enhancing student success, both during their studies and after they graduate. The system, however sophisticated, is merely a powerful tool, an enabler. It's not the end goal itself. The goal is educational excellence.
So, what does this all mean for you, our listener? As we've heard, the real objective here isn't just compliance. It's about achieving profound educational excellence. This system, all this technology, these processes, they're simply the enablers, perhaps the digital infrastructure needed for a truly transformed learning environment in the 21st century. The challenge, maybe the provocative thought to leave you with, is to consider how you will apply these insights. How you leverage these tools and concepts, not just to meet an external standard like ABET's, but to genuinely drive that deeper excellence within your own context. Think about how you can use this approach not just to check boxes, but to truly redefine and elevate the learning experience and the ultimate success of every single student you serve.